I wasn't supposed to be in Atlanta that day. I lived 2 hours away in Columbus, Georgia, and my daughter Jasmine had been dodging my calls for 3 weeks straight. Every time I asked how she was doing, she'd say the same thing. "I'm fine, Mama, just busy with the kids." But something in her voice didn't sit right. A mother knows when her child is lying, even if that child is 32 years old. So on a cold Tuesday morning in February, I got in my car and drove to Atlanta. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe Jasmine really was just busy. Maybe I was overreacting like I always did. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I pulled into the Walmart parking lot off Cobb Parkway around 9:30 in the morning. I'd driven past Jasmine's house first, but the driveway was empty and the curtains were drawn. So I decided to check the shopping center near her kids' daycare, thinking maybe she'd stop to run errands. That's when I saw it. A silver Honda Accord parked in the far corner of the lot, near the garden center. The windows were fogged up with condensation, and inside I could see movement. I walked closer, my heart starting to pound. Through the driver's side window, I saw my daughter. Jasmine was asleep in the front seat, her head tilted awkwardly against the window. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her jacket was too thin for the cold. In the back seat were my grandchildren, Caleb, 6 years old, and Ava, 4. They were curled up together under a single blanket, their school backpacks wedged beside them. Fast food wrappers covered the floor. A trash bag filled with clothes sat on the passenger seat. My baby was trying to make homelessness look like a sleepover. Where are you watching from? And if you're into family revenge stories where a parent protects the kids and exposes the liar, hit like and subscribe, because what I discovered next made me shake. I knocked on the window. Jasmine's eyes shot open. For a second, she just stared at me through the glass, and I saw something I'd never seen in my daughter's face before. Shame. She cracked the door open. "Mama, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" My voice came out louder than I meant it to. "Jasmine, why are you sleeping in a car with my grandchildren in a Walmart parking lot?" Caleb stirred in the back seat. "Grandma?" Ava rubbed her eyes. "Is it time for school?" Jasmine looked at me, then at her kids, then back at me. Her face crumpled. "Mama, please, not here, not in front of them." I opened the back door and smiled at Caleb and Ava like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babies, how about Grandma takes you all to breakfast? You like pancakes, right?" Ava nodded, still half asleep. Caleb looked at his mother, confused. "Mommy, are we still camping?" Camping. That's what she'd been telling them. "Yeah, baby," Jasmine said, her voice cracking, "but Grandma's taking us somewhere warm today." I loaded the kids into my car and drove them to the nearest IHOP. Jasmine followed in her car, and I watched her in my rearview mirror the whole way, terrified she'd turn and run. Inside the restaurant, I ordered pancakes and orange juice for the kids. They attacked the food like they hadn't eaten in days. Maybe they hadn't. Ava had syrup all over her face, and Caleb kept asking if he could have seconds. I told him he could have as much as he wanted. Jasmine sat across from me, staring at her coffee. She looked thinner than I remembered. Her hands shook when she lifted the cup. "Jasmine," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady, "tell me what's going on, right now." She closed her eyes. "Mama, I can't. It's too complicated." "Complicated? You're living in your car with 2 babies in the middle of winter. That's not complicated. That's a crisis." "It's not supposed to be like this," she whispered. "I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just stayed quiet and followed the rules, he'd let me see them again. But it's been 3 months, Mama. 3 months of supervised visits at his mother's house. 3 months of her writing notes about everything I do wrong. 3 months of him telling me I'm lucky to even get that much." My blood went cold. Who? Brandon? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He locked me out of the house, changed the locks, froze the bank accounts, filed a protective order saying I was dangerous. He told the court I was unstable, that I threatened him, that the kids weren't safe with me. He took everything, Mama. The house, the money, the kids, everything. I reached across the table and took her hand. Did you threaten him? No, her voice broke. I never threatened anyone. I don't even know what he's talking about. He says he has proof, screenshots, recordings, but I've never seen them. His lawyer just keeps saying, I'm a danger to my own children. I looked at Caleb and Ava, happily eating pancakes, completely unaware that their lives had been torn apart by a man who was supposed to protect them. And I made a decision right there in that IHOP booth. This wasn't going to stand. Not on my watch. After breakfast, I took Jasmine and the kids to a Holiday Inn Express near the interstate. I paid for a room with 2 queen beds and told Jasmine to get the kids cleaned up while I made some calls. Once Caleb and Ava were in the shower, Jasmine finally broke down completely. She sat on the edge of the bed and told me everything. Brandon had been planning this for months. He'd slowly taken control of every part of their lives without her noticing. First, he'd convinced her to put the house in his name only for, quote, tax purposes. Then he'd taken over the bank accounts, saying he was better with money. Then he'd started documenting everything she did, every argument, every mistake, every moment of frustration. He recorded me, Jasmine said, her voice hollow. I didn't even know. We had a fight one night because he came home late again, and I was angry. I raised my voice. I said I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. And he recorded it. Then he edited it down to make it sound like I was threatening him. What do you mean, edited? He cut out all his parts, all the context, so it just sounds like me screaming at him, and that's what he played for the judge. I felt rage building in my chest. And the judge believed him? His mother backed him up, said she'd witnessed me acting erratic, said I'd been unstable for months, and Brandon's lawyer painted this picture of me as this unhinged, dangerous woman who couldn't be trusted with her own children. But you have a job. You've never been violent. You're a good mother. I had a job, she corrected. I lost it 2 months ago. Couldn't keep up with the supervised visitation schedule and work at the same time. And once I lost the job, I couldn't afford a lawyer. So I've been representing myself, going to court alone, trying to fight this system that already decided I'm the bad guy. What about the money? You and Brandon had savings. Jasmine laughed bitterly. Gone. He emptied the joint account the day before he filed the protective order, moved it all into an account I can't access. Said it was to protect the family finances from my reckless behavior. The judge gave him temporary control of everything pending the custody hearing. When is the custody hearing? 2 months from now. But Mama, I don't have 2 months. I've been sleeping in my car because I can't afford rent. I've been using the gym to shower and the library to charge my phone. The kids think we're camping because I didn't want them to know how bad things got. But Caleb's starting to ask questions. He knows something's wrong. I looked at my daughter, this strong, smart woman who'd always had her life together, and saw her drowning. Where are you supposed to have these supervised visits? At Sharon's house. Brandon's mother. She sits in the corner with a notebook and writes down everything I do. If I hug Caleb too long, she writes it down. If I cry, she writes it down. If I bring the wrong snacks, she writes it down. Then Brandon's lawyer uses those notes to prove I'm unfit. That's not supervision. That's a setup. Jasmine nodded. I know, but what am I supposed to do? If I don't show up, I lose the visits completely. If I complain, Brandon says I'm being hostile and uncooperative. I'm trapped, Mama. He built a cage, and I walked right into it. I stood up and started pacing. My mind was racing. Does Brandon have the kids right now? He's supposed to. I dropped them off at daycare yesterday morning, and he was supposed to pick them up in the afternoon. But he didn't show, so the daycare called me. I picked them up, but I knew if I brought them back to Sharon's house, she'd say I was violating the order. So I've been keeping them with me, which means I'm technically in contempt of court right now for not following the supervised visitation rules. But he's the one who didn't pick them up. Doesn't matter. The order says I'm only allowed supervised contact. If I have them unsupervised, I'm in violation. I stopped pacing and looked at her. Jasmine, listen to me very carefully. This ends now. You and the kids are not going back to that car. You're not going back to Sharon's house. And you're not going to face this alone anymore. Mama, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling you, we're going to find you a lawyer, a real one. We're going to document everything. And we're going to prove that Brandon is a liar and his mother is helping him. Lawyers cost money I don't have. Then it's a good thing I do. I pulled out my phone. I know someone, a family attorney in Marietta. She handles cases like this. High conflict custody, financial abuse. I'm calling her right now. Jasmine stared at me, tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? Because you're my daughter, and those are my grandchildren. And I'll be damned if I let some man destroy you just because he can. I found an apartment the next day. It wasn't fancy. A 2-bedroom in a quiet complex in Marietta with beige carpet and builder-grade appliances, but it was clean, safe, and available immediately. The landlord was a woman in her 50s who took one look at Jasmine and the kids and didn't ask questions. She just handed me the keys. First month, last month, and deposit, she said. You can move in today. I paid in cash. Every dollar I'd been saving for my retirement went into that security deposit, but I didn't hesitate. You can't put a price on your grandchildren sleeping in real beds. We stopped at Target on the way to the apartment. I bought sheets, pillows, groceries, cleaning supplies, and clothes for the kids. Caleb picked out a blue comforter with dinosaurs. Ava wanted pink everything. Jasmine tried to tell me I didn't have to do all this, but I ignored her. She'd been surviving for months. Now it was time to rebuild. That first night in the apartment, I made spaghetti. Nothing fancy, just noodles and jar sauce. But Ava said it was the best dinner she'd ever had. Caleb ate 3 plates. After dinner, Jasmine gave them baths. Real baths, not gym showers or gas station sinks. And I heard them laughing for the first time in weeks. When the kids were asleep, Jasmine and I sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea. Mama, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. You need to let me help you. I pulled out a notebook. We're going to build a case. And that starts with documentation. I need you to write down everything. Every date, every visit, every text message from Brandon, every note Sharon wrote, everything. Jasmine looked exhausted. Why? The court already believes him. Because the court made a decision based on lies, now we're going to show them the truth. I slid the notebook toward her. And tomorrow, we're meeting with a lawyer. The next morning, I enrolled Caleb in first grade and Ava in pre-K at the local elementary school. The principal was kind. She'd seen situations like this before. She made a note in their files that only Jasmine and I were authorized for pickup. No exceptions. If Brandon Hale shows up, I said, you call me immediately. The principal nodded. We'll keep them safe, Mrs. Bennett. After school enrollment, I took Jasmine and the kids to a pediatrician for checkups. I wanted documentation that they were healthy, well cared for, and thriving under Jasmine's care. The doctor noted that both children were developmentally on track, well-nourished, and showed no signs of neglect or abuse. She wrote it all down in their charts. That afternoon, Brandon sent a text. I saw it pop up on Jasmine's phone while she was in the bathroom. "You're making this worse. Bring the kids back to my mother's house or I'll file a contempt motion. You're violating the order." When Jasmine came out, I showed her the message. "He's scared." "Scared of what? He has all the power." "No, he doesn't. Not anymore." I sat her down. "Think about it. He didn't pick up the kids from daycare. He abandoned them. But instead of admitting that, he's trying to blame you for stepping in. He's panicking because you're not homeless anymore. You're not desperate. And desperate people are easier to control." Jasmine stared at the text. "What do I say?" "Nothing. Save the message. We'll show it to the lawyer." I took her phone and screenshot the text, then forwarded it to my email. "From now on, every message he sends, we document. Every threat, every demand, every lie. We're building a file, baby. And when we walk into court, we're going to bury him in evidence." That night, Brandon called. Jasmine's phone rang 5 times before she finally answered, her hand shaking. "Where are my kids?" His voice was sharp, controlled. "They're safe," Jasmine said quietly. "That's not what I asked. You're in violation of the custody order. Bring them to my mother's house right now, or I'm calling my lawyer." "You didn't pick them up from daycare. I had no choice." "That's a lie. I was working. You're trying to alienate me from my own children." "Brandon, they were sitting at daycare for 2 hours after closing. The director called me because no one else came. What was I supposed to do? Follow the court order. But you can't, can you? Because you're unstable, and now you're proving it." Jasmine closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I reached over and took the phone from her hand. "Brandon, this is Gloria, Jasmine's mother. The kids are safe, they're housed, and they're not going anywhere until we talk to a lawyer. If you want to file contempt, go ahead. But you'll have to explain to a judge why you abandoned your children at daycare and then blamed your wife for taking care of them." There was silence on the other end. Then, coldly, "You don't know what you're getting into." "Try me." He hung up. Jasmine looked at me, her eyes wide. "Mama, what did you just do?" "I just called his bluff." I handed her phone back. "And tomorrow, we're going to make sure he can't ever use fear to control you again." Rachel Monroe's office was in a renovated house in downtown Marietta, just off the square. The waiting room had soft lighting, leather chairs, and a coffee station that actually had good coffee. This wasn't a strip mall lawyer. This was someone who knew what she was doing. Rachel was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a navy suit and no-nonsense heels. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm. "Mrs. Bennett, and you must be Jasmine." She gestured to the chairs across from her desk. "I read the summary you sent. Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." Jasmine walked her through the entire story. The house being put in Brandon's name. The joint accounts being emptied. The protective order. The recordings. The supervised visits at Sharon's house. The 3 months of homelessness. The kids sleeping in the car. Rachel listened, without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When Jasmine finished, Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Okay, here's what we're dealing with. Your ex-husband has executed what we call financial coercive control, combined with parental alienation. He systematically stripped you of resources, credibility, and access to your children. The protective order, the recordings, the supervised visits? This is a coordinated strategy. I've seen it before." "Can we fight it?" I asked. "We can, but it's going to take time and money, and we need to move fast." Rachel flipped through her notes. "First, we're filing an emergency motion to modify custody. Georgia law allows for emergency custody orders when there's evidence of immediate harm to the children or when the current arrangement is untenable. The fact that Jasmine was homeless and Brandon failed to pick up the kids from daycare, that's our opening. What does that mean? Jasmine asked. It means we're going to ask the court to give you temporary custody while the full case proceeds. We'll argue that the current supervised visitation order was based on false evidence, and that the children are actually safer and more stable with you now that your mother has provided housing. Will the judge listen? Depends on what we can prove. Brandon's case rests on the idea that you're unstable and dangerous. So we need to dismantle that narrative completely. Do you have copies of the recordings he used in court? Jasmine shook her head. His lawyer played them at the hearing, but I was never given copies. That's a discovery violation. We can subpoena them. Rachel made another note. What about the protective order? Do you have the petition he filed? Jasmine pulled a crumpled stack of papers from her purse. This is everything I have. Rachel read through the documents, her expression darkening. He claims you sent threatening text messages. Do you still have your phone records from that time period? I think so. I never deleted anything. Good. We're going to pull your full phone records and compare them to the screenshots he submitted. If the messages don't match, if he edited them or fabricated them, that's fraud. And if we can prove fraud, the protective order gets thrown out and his credibility evaporates. I leaned forward. How do we prove the recordings are fake? We bring in a digital forensics expert, someone who can analyze the audio files and prove they've been edited. Metadata, timestamps, cut points. There are ways to tell if a recording has been manipulated. If Brandon spliced together pieces of different conversations to make Jasmine sound threatening, we'll find it. Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper. How much is this going to cost? Rachel looked at her for a long moment. My retainer is $15,000. The forensic expert will be another $5,000. Court costs, filing fees, depositions, you're looking at $25,000 to $30,000 total before we even get to trial. Jasmine's face crumpled. I don't have that. I do, I said. I pulled out my checkbook. What do you need? Mama, no, that's your retirement. And you're my daughter. This is what the money's for. I looked at Rachel. I'll write you a check today. What's next? Rachel nodded slowly, respect in her eyes. Next, we go to war. We file the emergency custody motion tomorrow. We subpoena Brandon's evidence. We hire the forensic expert. And we start deposing witnesses, starting with Sharon Hale and her supervision notes. If she's been fabricating evidence to help her son, we're going to expose it. How long will this take? Jasmine asked. Emergency motions in Georgia typically get heard within 2 to 4 weeks. It's not instant, but it's faster than waiting for the full custody trial. And if we win? Rachel's smile was sharp. If we win, you get your kids back. Supervised visitation ends. Brandon's narrative collapses. And we start building the case for why he should never have custody in the first place. I looked at Jasmine. Then let's get started. Derek Kim arrived at Rachel's office 3 days later with a laptop bag and the kind of tired eyes that come from staring at screens for too long. He was in his mid-30s, wore a faded hoodie under a blazer, and had the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Ms. Monroe says you have recordings that might be fabricated, he said, shaking Jasmine's hand. Let's see what we're working with. Rachel had already subpoenaed Brandon's evidence, the text message, screenshots, and audio recordings he'd submitted to the court. Brandon's lawyer had fought it, but the judge ordered them released for review. Now they sat on the conference table in manila folders, looking innocent. But I knew better. Derek opened his laptop and pulled up the first audio file. It was Jasmine's voice, angry and loud. "I'm done with this. I swear to God, Brandon, I'm done. You think you can control me? You think I'm just gonna take this?" It sounded bad, really bad. Out of context, it sounded like a threat. Derek played it again, this time pulling up a waveform analysis on his screen. "Okay, first thing I'm noticing. This audio has been edited. See these flat lines here?" He pointed at sections of the waveform. "That's dead air, silence. But it's not natural silence. It's been inserted. Someone cut pieces out." "Can you tell what was cut?" I asked. "Not exactly, but I can tell you that this recording is missing context. What you're hearing is fragments stitched together." He pulled up another program. "Now let's look at the metadata." He clicked through screens too fast for me to follow. This file was created on February 14th at 11:47 p.m. But the timestamp embedded in the audio itself is from February 10th. That's a 4-day gap, which means someone recorded this conversation on February 10th, then edited and exported it on February 14th. Jasmine's face went pale. February 14th is the day before Brandon filed the protective order. "Exactly," Derek said. "He didn't just record you. He spent 4 days editing the recording to make it sound worse than it was. Then he submitted it as evidence." Rachel leaned forward. "Can you prove that in court?" "Absolutely. I can provide a full forensic report with waveform analysis, metadata logs, and timestamps. Any judge will see that this recording was manipulated." Derek moved on to the text message screenshots. He uploaded them to his laptop and zoomed in. "These are even sloppier. Look at the font here." He pointed at one of Jasmine's supposed messages. "This is Helvetica, but iMessage uses San Francisco font. Whoever made the screenshot didn't even bother matching the right typeface." "So they're fake?" I asked. "Not entirely fake. I think some of these messages are real. But they've been edited. Look at this timestamp. It says 9:42 p.m., but the message thread above it says 9:40 p.m., and the one below says 9:45 p.m. The timeline doesn't make sense. Someone inserted this message into an existing thread and took a screenshot." Jasmine started crying, not sad tears, angry tears. "He made it look like I threatened him. He took real conversations and twisted them into something I never said." "That's exactly what he did," Derek said, "and it's not uncommon. I see this all the time in custody cases. One party manufactures evidence to paint the other as dangerous. But the problem with manufactured evidence is that it leaves traces, and those traces are what I'm going to show the court." Rachel was already typing notes on her laptop. "How fast can you get me a full report?" 2 days. Maybe 3. Make it 2. The emergency hearing is in 10 days. Derek nodded and started packing up his equipment. Before he left, he looked at Jasmine. "For what it's worth, I've analyzed hundreds of these cases. The real threats don't need editing. The fact that he had to manipulate your words to make you sound dangerous tells me you weren't dangerous at all." Jasmine just nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. After Derek left, Rachel pulled up the deposition schedule. "We're deposing Sharon Hale next week, Brandon's mother, the one who's been supervising your visits and writing all those notes about your behavior." "She's going to lie," Jasmine said flatly. "Probably. But here's the thing about liars. They can't keep their stories straight under pressure. I'm going to ask her specific questions about specific visits. Dates, times, what was said, what the kids were wearing. If she's making things up, the details won't match. And if they don't match, her credibility is gone." "What about Brandon?" I asked. "Are we deposing him?" "Not yet. I want him to think he's safe. Let him get comfortable. Let him think his evidence is solid. Then, at the hearing, we're going to blindside him with Derek's forensic report. he won't have time to come up with a new story. Rachel's smile was cold. The best traps are the ones people don't see coming. I looked at my daughter. For the first time in weeks, there was hope in her eyes. We're going to win this, I said. Rachel closed her laptop. We already are. While Derek worked on the digital evidence, Rachel brought in a forensic accountant named Patricia Osai. Patricia was in her 50s, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had the kind of sharp, methodical energy that made you feel like nothing escaped her notice. She sat across from Jasmine at Rachel's conference table, with 3 years of bank statements spread out in front of her. Walk me through the finances, Patricia said. Start from the beginning. Jasmine took a shaky breath. Brandon and I had a joint checking account. We both deposited our paychecks there. We used it for everything. Mortgage, bills, groceries, daycare. Who managed the account? Brandon, mostly? He said he was better with money. I didn't question it. Patricia made a note. And when did you lose access? February 15th, the day after he filed the protective order. I tried to use my debit card at the grocery store, and it was declined. When I checked the account online, I'd been locked out. My login didn't work anymore. Patricia pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. I've been going through the transaction history. On February 14th at 11:52 p.m., there was a transfer of $47,820 from your joint account to an account ending in 7,734. Do you know what that account is? Jasmine shook her head. I've never seen that account number before. It's a business checking account, registered to BH Consulting, LLC, and according to Georgia Secretary of State records, BH Consulting was incorporated 3 months before Brandon filed for the protective order. The sole owner is Brandon Hale. I felt my hands curl into fists. He set up a company to hide the money. That's exactly what he did, Patricia said. And it gets worse. After the initial transfer, there were 5 additional transfers over the next 2 weeks. Smaller amounts. $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Moving from the LLC account into a personal account belonging to Sharon Hale, Brandon's mother. Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper. He gave my money to his mother? Technically, yes, but I suspect it's not a gift. I think he's using her accounts to hide assets. If the court orders him to return the marital funds, he can claim he doesn't have them anymore. They're in his mother's possession. It's a shell game. Rachel leaned forward. Can we prove it's marital property? Absolutely. The funds originated from the joint account, which was funded by both parties. Income during the marriage. Under Georgia law, that makes it marital property subject to equitable division. Brandon can't just unilaterally transfer it to a third party without consequences. What about the house? I asked. Jasmine said he convinced her to put it in his name. Patricia flipped through another stack of documents. The house was originally purchased in both names. But in October of last year, Jasmine signed a quitclaim deed transferring her ownership interest to Brandon. Do you remember signing this? Jasmine stared at the document. He said it was for tax purposes. He said we'd save money if the house was in one name. I trusted him. I signed it without reading it. That's a common tactic in financial abuse cases, Patricia said gently. The controlling party convinces the other to sign away assets under false pretenses. But here's the good news. Quitclaim deeds signed under duress or fraud can be challenged. If we can prove Brandon lied about the reason for the transfer, we can argue the deed should be voided. Rachel was typing furiously on her laptop. Patricia, I need a full report. Every transfer, every account, every asset. I want a paper trail that shows exactly how Brandon systematically stripped Jasmine of financial resources in preparation for filing the protective order. You'll have it by end of week. And I need you to be ready to testify at the emergency hearing. The judge needs to see that this wasn't just a custody dispute. This was financial warfare designed to leave Jasmine homeless and helpless. Patricia nodded. "I'll be there." After she left, Jasmine sat in silence for a long time. Then she looked at me. "I feel like an idiot. How did I not see what he was doing?" "Because you trusted him," I said, "and that's not your fault. He exploited that trust. He planned this for months, maybe years. You couldn't have known." "But I should have. I should have paid more attention to the finances. I should have questioned him." "Jasmine, stop." I took her hands. "This is not on you. Brandon is the one who lied. Brandon is the one who stole. Brandon is the one who left his own children sleeping in a car. Not you. Him." Rachel closed her laptop. "And in 10 days, we're going to make sure everyone knows it." The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in Cobb County Superior Court. Rachel told us to arrive early, dress conservatively, and let her do all the talking. I wore a navy dress. Jasmine wore a gray blouse and black pants that I'd bought her the week before. She looked tired but determined. We'd been up until midnight the night before going over her testimony. Brandon was already in the courtroom when we arrived. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a tie that probably cost more than Jasmine's entire outfit. His lawyer, Trevor Harding, stood beside him in an equally expensive suit. They looked polished, confident, like they'd already won. Sharon Hale sat in the front row behind them, her hands folded in her lap, her face composed. She looked like a concerned grandmother. But I knew better. Judge Margaret Holloway entered at exactly 9 a.m. She was in her early 60s, gray hair pulled back in a bun, and had the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book. "This is an emergency motion to modify custody," she said, flipping through the file. "Ms. Monroe, you're representing the petitioner?" Rachel stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My client, Jasmine Bennett, is seeking immediate modification of the custody order based on new evidence and changed circumstances." "Proceed." Rachel presented our case methodically. First, she established that Jasmine now had stable housing, stable income from a new job she'd started the week before, and that both children were enrolled in school and thriving. She submitted the pediatrician's report, showing both kids were healthy and well-adjusted. Then she moved to the financial evidence. Patricia Osai took the stand and walked the judge through the money trail. The joint account emptied the night before the protective order was filed, the LLC shell company, the transfers to Sharon's accounts. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "this is textbook financial coercive control. Mr. Hale systematically stripped Ms. Bennett of all financial resources, rendering her homeless, then used her homelessness as evidence that she was unfit to parent. It was a coordinated strategy." Trevor Harding objected. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the custody matter." "It's absolutely relevant," Rachel countered. "Mr. Hale claimed Ms. Bennett was unstable and dangerous. But the evidence shows he manufactured that instability by stealing her money and locking her out of her own home. Financial abuse is domestic abuse, and it goes directly to credibility." Judge Holloway nodded. "I'll allow it. Continue." Next came Derek Kim. He pulled up his laptop and showed the judge the forensic analysis of the recordings and text messages, the edited waveforms, the mismatched timestamps, the manipulated screenshots. "Your Honor," Derek said, "these recordings were edited to remove context and make Ms. Bennett sound threatening. The metadata proves the files were created days after the alleged conversations took place. And the text messages show clear signs of digital manipulation, wrong fonts, inconsistent timestamps, inserted phrases that don't match the message thread. The courtroom was silent. I watched Brandon's face. For the first time, he didn't look confident. He looked cornered. Judge Holloway leaned forward. "Mr. Harding, your client submitted these recordings and screenshots as evidence in the original protective order hearing. Are you telling me they're fabricated?" Trevor Harding stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client maintains that these recordings are accurate representations of—" "I didn't ask what your client maintains. I asked if they're fabricated." Trevor hesitated. "I'll need time to review the forensic analysis." "You've had 10 days. Judge Holloway looked at Brandon. "Mr. Hale, did you edit these recordings before submitting them to the court?" Brandon stood. "Your Honor, I was just trying to protect my children. My ex-wife was acting erratic and—" "Answer the question. Did you edit these recordings?" A long pause. I may have shortened them to focus on the relevant parts. By removing your own voice and leaving only your ex-wife's words? Making it sound like she was threatening you when, in fact, you were engaged in a mutual argument." Brandon didn't answer. Judge Holloway turned to Rachel. "Do you have anything else?" "One more witness, Your Honor." Rachel called Sharon Hale to the stand. Sharon took the oath, her face calm, but I saw her hands trembling slightly. Rachel pulled out a stack of supervision notes, the ones Sharon had written during Jasmine's visits. "Mrs. Hale, you wrote here that on March 3rd, Ms. Bennett appeared agitated and raised her voice at the children. Is that accurate?" "Yes." "And you were supervising the visit in your home?" "Correct." Rachel pulled out her phone and played an audio recording. It was from one of Jasmine's visits. We'd started recording them weeks ago. In the recording, Jasmine's voice was calm, gentle, reading a story to Caleb and Ava. There was no yelling, no agitation. "This is the audio from that visit, Mrs. Hale. Does this sound like someone raising their voice?" Sharon's face flushed. That's not. I may have mixed up the dates." "Or you fabricated the notes to support your son's case." "Objection!" Trevor Harding stood. "Withdrawn." Rachel turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The protective order was obtained through fraud. The supervised visitation was weaponized to create false documentation. And Ms. Bennett's homelessness was manufactured through financial abuse. We're asking the court to terminate the protective order, end supervised visitation, and grant Ms. Bennett temporary primary custody pending a full hearing." Judge Holloway was silent for a long moment. Then she picked up her gavel. "The temporary protective order is hereby terminated. Supervised visitation is terminated. Ms. Bennett is granted temporary primary physical custody. Mr. Hale will have standard visitation every other weekend and one evening per week. A full custody hearing will be scheduled within 60 days. The gavel came down. Jasmine collapsed into my arms, sobbing. 6 months later, Jasmine and the kids were living in the Marietta apartment full-time. Caleb was thriving in first grade, making friends, playing soccer on weekends. Ava had started taking dance classes and talked nonstop about wanting to be a ballerina. Jasmine got promoted at work, assistant manager at a medical billing company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and she was good at it. For the first time in years, I saw her smile without looking over her shoulder. Brandon's life, on the other hand, had unraveled. After the emergency hearing, Rachel filed a motion to compel him to return the marital funds he transferred. The judge ordered him to repay $47,820 within 90 days or face contempt charges. Brandon's lawyer tried to argue that the money was business expenses, but Patricia's forensic report demolished that claim. Sharon had to write a check from her account for $18,000, all the money Brandon had transferred to her. She sent it with a note that said, "I hope you're happy." I threw the note away and deposited the check. The house was another battle. Rachel filed to void the quitclaim deed, arguing it was signed under false pretenses. Brandon fought it. But between the forensic accounting and Jasmine's testimony about how he'd lied about the, quote, tax benefits, the judge ruled in Jasmine's favor. The house was returned to joint ownership, then sold. Jasmine got her half of the proceeds, enough for a down payment on a small house of her own. Brandon's visitation became sporadic. He'd show up late, cancel at the last minute, forget to bring the kids home on time. Rachel documented every violation. At the final custody hearing 3 months later, the judge granted Jasmine primary, physical, and legal custody. Brandon got every other weekend, but only if he gave 48 hours notice. He rarely did. Caleb stopped asking when Daddy was coming. Ava stopped waiting by the window on Friday nights. One Saturday afternoon in August, I was at Jasmine's new house helping her paint the kitchen. It was a small ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood, with a fenced backyard and a swing set I'd bought for the kids. Caleb and Ava were outside playing, their laughter drifting through the open windows. Jasmine climbed down from the step stool and wiped paint from her hands. "Mama, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think I should forgive him? For the kids' sake?" I set down my paintbrush. "Do you want to forgive him?" "I don't know. Everyone keeps saying kids need their father, that I should try to co-parent peacefully. But every time I think about what he did, how he made me homeless, how he lied to the court, how he tried to take my babies, I just feel angry." "Then stay angry," I said. "Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, especially not someone who tried to destroy you." "But what about Caleb and Ava? What if they resent me for keeping them from their dad?" "Jasmine, you're not keeping them from anyone. The custody order gives Brandon visitation. He's the one who's not showing up. You can't make him be a father. That's his choice." She was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about that night in the car. When you found us. I was so ashamed, Mama. I thought I was a failure. I thought I'd lost everything." "You didn't lose anything that mattered. You still had your kids. You still had yourself. Everything else we rebuilt. Because of you?" "No, because you were strong enough to let me help." I took her hand. "You know what I've learned in all this? Love isn't about making people comfortable. Sometimes love means setting a boundary so hard, it breaks your heart. Because the alternative is watching them destroy themselves, or letting them destroy you." Jasmine wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Mama, for everything. For believing me when no one else did. For fighting when I was too tired to fight." That's what mothers do. We show up, we make the hard choices, and we protect our children, even from the people who are supposed to love them. Caleb burst through the back door, Ava right behind him. "Grandma! Mom! Come see the fort we built." Jasmine smiled. "We'll be right there, baby." We followed them outside. The fort was a masterpiece of couch cushions and blankets, precariously balanced in the shade of the oak tree. Ava crawled inside and announced that only princesses were allowed. Caleb immediately declared himself a knight. I looked at Jasmine. She was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. And I thought, this is what winning looks like. Not a courtroom victory, not money returned or custody orders signed. This, safety, stability, laughter in the backyard on a Saturday afternoon. Brandon had tried to take everything, but we built it back, better, stronger, and nothing he did could ever touch us again. If you made it to the end, you're real. Like, subscribe, and comment this. Should a mother ever forgive a man who made her daughter homeless with 2 kids, or is he permanently cut off?